Close your eyes for a moment and step into France on the eve of a world turning upside down. You are not a philosopher in a Paris salon. You are not a minister with access to maps and ministers. You are a rural laborer, born into a village of stone houses, narrow lanes, and fields that decide whether your family eats. Over 4 chapters, you will live the revolution from the ground level, where history is felt as hunger, as paperwork, as marching feet, and as cannon you hear before you see. You will start in Burgundy, among vineyards and wheat. You will watch old feudal obligations crack, then follow the shockwave into Paris, where crowds and decrees move faster than anyone can breathe. You will be pushed to the frontiers at Valmy and beyond, into the rain and canals of the north. You will survive the Levee en Masse and the Terror's shadow, then cross into the Alps and the bright plains of Italy as the Republic hardens into an empire in all but name. This is not a fairy tale. It is a personal field report, told to you as if you were there, because in this story, you are. Before we begin, a quick note. If you have not subscribed to the channel yet, please subscribe and like this video. It is the simplest way to support the next episodes, and it genuinely helps this series reach the people who enjoy deep documentary-style storytelling. Part 1. The Village Before the Storm. You are born on the soft edge of Burgundy, where limestone hills fold into vineyards and wheat fields, and where the Saône River lies a day's walk to the east like a silver seam in the land. Your village is small enough that you know every roof beam by its creak. A few dozen houses huddle around a stone church, a muddy square, and the Lord's dovecote that stands like a constant reminder that even birds belong to someone. Your world is measured in seasons, not dates. Spring means the plow biting into heavy soil, the smell of manure, and your hands raw from pulling stones out of fields that never stop giving them back. Summer means hay, then wheat, then the long march of carts to the mill. Autumn is grapes for those who rent a strip of vine, and chestnuts in the forest where you look over your shoulder because the woods are claimed by the seigneur's laws. Winter is hunger dressed up as patience. The taxes have names that sound ordinary until they hollow out a family. The taille takes a share of what you grow. The gabelle forces you to buy salt at a price set by men who never watched meat rot for lack of it. The tithe goes to the church, even when the priest's own garden looks healthier than yours. Then there are the corvées, the days you owe to the king's road, mending ruts and hauling stones while your own field waits. You learn early that poverty is not only the absence of coins. It is the constant calculation of how many days of bread remain, which tool can be patched, and which child gets the bigger piece. When you walk past the chateau on the low hill beyond the last hedgerow, you keep your eyes down out of habit. The noble family is not always present, but their rights are. The mill fee, the oven fee, the hunting privileges that let a lord's riders trample a field and still blame the peasant for being in the way. On Sundays, the church teaches humility, and you learn it the way you learn cold water, by exposure. Yet even here, the wider kingdom presses in. A bad harvest in distant Beauce or in the south can push prices up in your market town, because grain follows profit more reliably than it follows need. In 1788, the weather turns against you with a cruelty that feels personal. Hail shreds vines and flattens wheat. Then an early frost hardens the ground, and the winter that follows is spoken of for generations. Rivers crust over, paths become glass, and bread becomes an argument in every home. You remember the sound of your mother scraping the last flour from a sack, as if she were trying to wake it. In the market town, you see women count out sous with shaking hands, only to be told the price has risen yet again. The queue becomes a kind of daily march, except the enemy is emptiness. News arrives the way storms do, carried by travelers and by the priest reading royal notices after Mass. Men talk in the doorway of the inn about the king calling the estates general, something that has not happened in living memory. You hear words that feel too large for your lane. Representation, liberty, constitution. At first, they are only sounds. Then the village chooses men to help draft grievances. The cahier. You sit on a bench under the church porch, while older farmers list what they have endured. Dues that never end. Forest laws that punish a poor man for taking dead wood. Fees paid to use a mill that barely grinds. And taxes collected with the confidence of people who never go hungry.
When 1789 comes, it comes with heat and fear. Grain convoys are rumored to be ambushed. Stories spread that nobles are hiring brigands to punish villages, to burn harvests. The panic moves faster than horses. One night, every barking dog sounds like an army. Men sharpen scythes. Someone drags an old musket from a loft. You stand in a line on the edge of the fields, watching the road, your mouth dry, feeling how quickly a village can become a camp. Then a messenger from the town rides through shouting that the Bastille has fallen in Paris. You have never seen Paris, but you know what a fortress means. The image is immediate. Stone walls cracking under the pressure of ordinary hands. For the first time, power feels like something that can break. Weeks later, the great fear reaches your valley for real. A crowd forms and moves toward the nearby chateau, not to murder, but to erase. You walk with them along a path bordered by hedges and oaks, past fields that belong to families who will never own them. The chateau sits on higher ground, looking down, as it always has. Inside, men demand the papers, the records of dues and obligations, the proof that you owe what you owe. Someone finds the archives, bundles of parchment tied like firewood. In the courtyard, the papers burn, and the smoke smells of ink and centuries. You watch flames chew through signatures and seals. It is not the end of hardship, but it is the first time you see history physically change direction, like a cart forced onto a new track. In the weeks that follow, Paris becomes a compass you can feel without seeing it. The priest reads notices about the night of August 4th, when privileges are said to be abolished. Men repeat it like a charm. Feudal rights are ended, yet the harvest does not grow faster because a decree says so, and rent is still demanded. What changes first is your voice. In the tavern, villagers try out citizen, awkwardly, as if the word might summon equality by being spoken aloud. A municipal council forms. The notary, the schoolmaster, and farmers who can read a ledger suddenly matter more than a noble's letter. A local National Guard is improvised. Mismatched coats, pikes from sharpened poles, a handful of muskets. You drill in the square, stepping in mud, learning that order can be built by common hands. You travel more for salt, for day labor, for news. In Chalon and Autumn, you see posters nailed to doors and hear arguments that spill into streets. Bread riots flare in nearby towns, and grain carts are stopped on the road by people certain someone is hoarding hunger for profit. Every church bell now carries a second meaning, not only Mass, but alarm. Even the church begins to split. Some priests accept the new oath demanded by Paris. Others refuse and become refractory. In your own village, the priest hesitates, and families take sides. The revolution does not only change laws, it rearranges trust. Underneath all of it, life stays brutally physical. Walls to mend, blisters to reopen, mouths to feed. But each new decree posted in the town square presses the same question into you. If rights are being written down for people like you, what will they demand from you in return? Part 2. Paris and the Road to War. By 1791, you have learned that revolutions travel at different speeds. In Paris, clubs argue late into the night, newspapers multiply, and every week seems to invent a new kind of politics. In the countryside, change is slower, mixed with mud and habit, but it reaches you all the same. That summer, rumors spread that the king has tried to flee. The story arrives in fragments: a coach on country roads, a family disguised, an arrest at Varennes. You do not know the names of courtiers, but you understand the meaning of a ruler running from his own people. In the inn, men who once bowed at the mention of His Majesty now spit into the straw and speak of betrayal. Others, especially older women, cross themselves and whisper that without a king the world will tilt off its axis. You stand between those voices and feel the village split along lines that used to be invisible. Your region holds its own echo of the Festival of the Federation. You walk to the district town and watch men in tricolor cockades swear oaths to the nation, the law, and the king, as if those three words could remain on the same line forever. There are drums, banners, and a sense of ceremony. But you also see the practical side, the new departments and districts, the officials who measure roads and register births, the ledgers that replace the Lord's old accounts. A state is being rebuilt from the ground up, one form at a time. Then the wider world breaks in. In April 1792, war with Austria is declared, and soon Prussia follows. The word frontier suddenly matters to villagers who have never traveled beyond their province. Recruiting posters appear. The talk in the square changes from taxes to armies. You hear the new song from Paris, the one that turns marching into music. It is catchy and unsettling. You hear of the Brunswick Manifesto, a threat issued in the name of foreign princes, promising punishment if Paris harms the royal family. Even if you never read it yourself, its meaning is repeated until everyone knows it. Outsiders claim the right to terrify you back into obedience. In the markets, anger rises like heat. People say, if they come, they will burn our towns and hang our mayors. Fear becomes fuel. At first you resist, Your family needs hands. The fields do not care about the fate of kings, but pressure builds. District officials say the nation is threatened, that monarchs across Europe want to crush the revolution and restore the old burdens. They point to the map as if it were a battlefield already. The Rhine to the east, the passes through the Vosges, the open approaches from the Low Countries. To you, geography becomes strategy. You go as a volunteer, a citizen in arms, with a coat that does not quite fit and shoes that will fail before winter. In the town where you muster, you meet men from other villages, from mountain valleys and river plains. Accents collide. Some are eager, dreaming of glory. Others are terrified and hiding it behind jokes. A veteran from the old Royal Army shows you how to hold a musket so the recoil will not break your shoulder. You learn to keep your powder dry, to sleep in snatches, and to march with your jaw loose so your teeth do not clatter from cold. The road to Paris is the first time you understand the scale of France. You march north along rutted highways, sleeping in barns, crossing rivers on stone bridges that feel ancient. When you reach the Seine basin, the land opens into wide fields and gentle slopes. Then Paris rises ahead like a dark reef of roofs and chimneys. The city smells of smoke, sweat, and politics. You see crowds everywhere, in front of bakeries, at the doors of clubs, around street preachers and pamphleteers. Walls are plastered with slogans. Sections of the city meet and argue as if debate itself were a kind of war. In August, you are in the city when tension turns into violence. You do not stand at the center of power, but you feel its shock waves. The Tuileries is attacked, and the old order collapses in a single day of gunfire and panic. You see Swiss guards carried past, blood soaking their red coats. You see ordinary men with pikes and muskets shouting that they are defending the people. In the evenings, you hear of prisons emptied by force, of judgments made by crowds. You learn that revolution, when cornered, can bite as hard as any tyrant. Soon you are sent east, toward Champagne and the Argonne, where forests and low ridges form a natural gate into France. You march through Reims and smaller towns where churches still dominate the skyline, but now their bells sound for mobilization. The camps are muddy. Food is thin. Officers argue about discipline because many of you still think like villagers, not soldiers. In September 1792, cannon thunder near Valmy. The battlefield is not heroic in the way songs claim. It is wet ground, smoke, and the sound of iron tearing air. You stand in a line with men you barely know, your mouth tasting of fear and damp powder. The Prussian artillery answers yours, and the earth jumps under your boots. Somewhere ahead, on a rise crowned by a windmill, commanders watch through smoke. When the French line holds, when you do not run, something changes inside you. You realize that courage is sometimes just the refusal to move. After Valmy, your army pushes into the Low Countries. The landscape changes again. Flatter land, canals, brick towns, and roads that turn to glue under rain. At Jemappes, you see the cost of attacking entrenched positions. You watch men fall and keep marching because stopping would mean death anyway. Victory tastes like exhaustion and mud. You begin to understand that the revolution is no longer only decrees and burned papers. It is now a machine that eats time, distance, and bodies. In the winter that follows, you sit by a campfire near the frontier and think of your village's quiet fields. You try to remember the smell of harvest and the sound of your church bell. But the geography of your life has shifted. Your map is now rivers and routes, supply depots, and enemy lines. And you know, with a certainty that chills you more than the wind, that the war has only begun. Part 3. Levee en Masse and the war that enters your bones. 1793 begins with a different mood. The revolution is no longer young and hopeful. It is defensive, suspicious, and armed to the teeth. You hear that the king has been executed in Paris. The news reaches the camps like a cold wind. Some cheer, some go silent. For you, the moment is less about the man than about the door that has been slammed shut behind you. There will be no return to the old world now, even if you wanted one. Then comes the Levee en Masse, the call that turns the entire country into a reservoir of soldiers, horses, cloth, and grain. Villages must provide men, fields must provide wheat, workshops must produce muskets. It is the first truly modern mobilization you have ever witnessed, and you are inside it, not reading about it. Requisition agents arrive with lists and seals. They count boots like they are counting cannon. They take church bells to be melted for metal. Your unit is sent north again into Flanders and the borderlands where France presses against the Austrian Netherlands. The geography here is deceptive. From a distance, it looks like gentle farmland, but it is stitched with ditches, canals, and hedgerows that break formations and hide ambushes. Villages sit on slight rises, surrounded by waterlogged fields. Roads are narrow causeways. Rain is constant. Mud becomes a second uniform. The army changes around you. There are more men, many barely trained, and fewer experienced officers, because suspicion has reached the ranks. Representatives on mission arrive from Paris, civilians with authority over generals. They speak of virtue and treason in the same breath. They inspect your camp, your buttons, your loyalty. A careless remark can become an accusation. You learn to measure your words as carefully as your powder. Food is worse than in 1792. Supply lines stretch and fray. Bread arrives green with mold, and you eat it anyway. Shoes dissolve. Soldiers wrap their feet in cloth and keep marching, leaving dark prints on the road. When sickness spreads, hospitals are barns filled with straw, where men cough and stare at rafters as if trying to climb out of their bodies. You begin to understand that war is not only battles, it is logistics failing, disease winning, and endurance pretending to be courage. Sometimes you receive letters from home, folded small and stained with kitchen smoke. They speak of assignats losing value, of prices climbing, of men arguing in the village council about requisitions. Your mother writes that the church is quieter now, that some people pray in secret, that the old chateau's stones are being sold as building material. You read the words by firelight and realize that the front is not only a line on a map, it is a thread pulled tight through every household in France. Once, on brief leave, you walk the familiar road back to your village, and it feels narrower than you remember. The fields look the same, but the conversations do not. People ask you about Paris, about generals, about the Republic's enemies. Children play at drilling with sticks. Even the landscape seems politicized. The road you once mended for the king is now called a national road, and the milestone bears a new measure for distance, as if the revolution is counting the country anew. In the spring, you take part in sieges and skirmishes that will never become famous paintings. At one small fortified town, you dig trenches in ground so wet it collapses as soon as you shovel it. You sleep sitting up because lying down means sinking. When the order comes to storm a redoubt, You run forward with a shout you do not recognize as your own. You see flashes, smoke, and the sudden intimate shock of a man falling against you. Later, when the position is taken, the triumph feels thin. The earth itself seems exhausted. Behind the lines you hear about civil war in the west, in the Vendée. Some comrades are redirected south, and they return weeks later with eyes that have lost their softness. They speak of villages burned, of priests hidden in barns, of neighbors shooting neighbors. The revolution is fighting foreign armies at the frontier and fighting its own shadow at home. You realize that the map of France has become a map of suspicion. Paris is far, but it reaches you through orders, through newspapers passed hand to hand, through the names people whisper, the Committee of Public Safety, the guillotine, the terror. You hear of grain shortages, of price controls, of arrests. In camp, men argue about whether fear is necessary to save the Republic or whether it is turning the Republic into something else. You listen more than you speak. You have learned that ideas can be as dangerous as bullets. In June 1794, you are near the Sambre, close to the town of Fleurus. The air is warm, the fields greener than you expect after months of gray. The battle is vast, spread across villages and ridges. You see artillery positioned on slight heights, infantry columns moving like slow rivers, cavalry trying to find firm ground. Above you, a strange new presence hovers, an observation balloon, tethered and drifting, used to watch enemy movements. It is an almost absurd symbol of the age you are living in, as if the sky itself has been recruited. When the day ends, the Republic holds the field. The victory opens Belgium and pushes the enemy back. Commanders speak of strategy and momentum. For you, the memory is simpler. The smell of powder and trampled grass, the taste of water from a ditch, the moment you realized you were still alive. Not long after, the political weather shifts again. News comes that Robespierre has fallen in Paris, arrested and executed in July 1794. The terror loosens its grip. You do not celebrate loudly. You have seen how quickly tides turn, but you feel a quiet release, as if a hand has eased off your throat. Officers begin to speak more freely. Men laugh again cautiously, like people testing ice. And when you look back over the last year, you understand something that would have sounded impossible in your village. You have been remade. The peasant who once measured life by harvests now measures it by campaigns. You can read a map. You know the sound of different cannon. You can tell the direction of a river by the mist over it at dawn. The Republic has taken your youth and returned to you a new kind of knowledge, written not on paper, but in your muscles and your bones. Part 4. The Directory, the Alps, and What Remains. By 1795, after years of marching, you finally taste something like a pause. The Republic is still at war, but Paris has changed its face again. The convention gives way to the Directory. Men in fine coats replace men in plain ones. The language shifts from virtue to stability, from purity to profit. You feel it before anyone explains it, the way you feel a change in wind before rain. When you return home, the village is both familiar and strange. The same hills rise beyond the fields, and the same stream bends through the willows, but the social map has been redrawn. Some neighbors have bought parcels of land that once belonged to the church or to emigre nobles, paying with paper money that everyone distrusts. Others have lost savings to inflation and cursed the revolution for stealing not only a king, but their coins. In the tavern, you hear new kinds of resentment. Against Paris for being distant, against merchants for being clever, against officials for requisitioning grain, against anyone who seems to have benefited while others bled. There are scars you can see. Young men are missing. A few houses are empty, their doors warped or nailed shut. The old priest is gone, replaced by one who swears loyalty to the state, and the congregation is thinner. Yet there is also a stubborn pride. People speak as if they own their words more than before. They argue loudly with the mayor, and the mayor argues back. You realize that even exhaustion can be a form of citizenship. Peace does not last in your body. The army is still hungry for men, and the frontiers still shift. In 1796, you are called again, this time toward the southeast, where the war is being fought not in wet fields, but in mountains. You march down the Rhone Valley, following the river's broad corridor, past vineyards and stone towns, through Lyon's outskirts where factories hum and the memory of earlier violence still hangs in the air. The air grows sharper as you approach the Dauphine. To the east, the Alps rise like a wall, white at the top, even in spring. Crossing the mountains is nothing like fighting in Flanders. Here, geography is a weapon in itself. Roads cling to cliffs, bridges are narrow, and a few stones placed well can stop an army. You climb passes where snow blinds you and breath burns. Mules slip and vanish into ravines, taking powder and bread with them. At night, you sleep in barns or in the open, wrapped in whatever cloth you have, listening to wind that sounds like distant artillery. When you crest a ridge and look south, you see the world drop away into valleys that feel as if they belong to another country entirely. On the Italian side, everything changes abruptly. The light is brighter. The valleys open into the Po Plain, wide and fertile, with mulberry trees and irrigation channels. Towns are walled and crowded, their churches filled with paintings that make your village altar look bare. You pass through places whose names sound foreign on your tongue: Turin's broad streets, Milan's squares, the fortified towns along the rivers. The Republic does not only fight here, it reorganizes. Municipalities are renamed. New client republics are proclaimed. Soldiers like you become the visible edge of a political project, whether you understand it or not. War here moves fast. Officers speak less about holding a line and more about turning flanks, cutting roads, forcing surrenders. You hear one name repeated with a mixture of admiration and irritation: Bonaparte. You rarely see him closely, but you feel the effect of his methods. Marches are longer. Orders come quicker. Victories, when they arrive, are used like leverage, not just like trophies. You are present at crossings and fights that later will be called brilliant. To you, they are still chaos. At a river like the Adda, water up to your waist, you hold your musket above your head and stumble forward under fire, trying not to lose your footing. At Arcole, near marshy ground and narrow causeways, you see men bunch up under cannon and then scatter like startled birds. You learn the cruel geometry of a bridge, how it funnels courage into a single vulnerable strip. Later, at Rivoli, on broken high ground, you watch formations fracture around rocks and slopes, and you learn to read a hillside the way you once read clouds for weather. Between engagements, you enter captured towns and see the other face of victory. Storehouses opened, church plate inventoried, contributions demanded. Some comrades justify it by saying the army must live. Others loot out of hunger or anger. You try to keep your hands clean, but you also know you cannot eat principles. The revolution which began with talk of rights, now marches with ledgers and receipts in its saddlebags. Back in France, politics keeps lurching, elections are manipulated, coups attempted, newspapers shut down, then revived. Soldiers are paid late, if at all. Some officers grow rich, and some soldiers desert to survive. The Republic becomes a complicated thing. Neither the dream of 1789 nor the terror of 1793, but a hard system that runs on taxes, paper, and gunpowder. By 1799, you are tired in a way that goes beyond muscles. You have marched from Burgundy lanes to Argonne forests, from Flemish canals to Alpine passes, from gray northern rain to Italian sun. France itself feels larger inside your head, stitched together by roads you have walked and rivers you have crossed. Then the news arrives that Bonaparte has returned from Egypt and that on the 18th of Brumaire he has overthrown the Directory. Some say the revolution is saved from chaos. Others say it has been traded for a single strong hand. In camp, men mostly ask a simpler question: will this end the marching? When you finally stand again in your village square, you realize the simplest truth of all. You cannot go back to the person you were before 1789, because that person did not know what a nation could demand. You have seen how ideas can move armies and how geography can shape fate. You have watched the old world burn and the new one stumble forward, limping, armed, and alive. And if you listen carefully on a quiet evening when the wind comes down from the hills, you can still hear, beneath the ordinary sounds of village life, the distant echo of drums that once pulled you out onto the road. If you want more stories like this, told from inside the lives of ordinary people caught in extraordinary events, please like the video and subscribe. Your support is what makes it possible to keep producing the next chapters. Thank you for listening.